Hello and welcome to the Monday show via the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Aaron Stokes, and we are back live and in person here at Chronicle Towers. We're going to look back on a tremendous win for Newcastle United over Arsenal. The Magpies run out 1-0 winners up at St James's Park in a performance, at least for me, Aaron, that was one of the best of the season so far. We're going to talk tactics, the midfield three, the local hero proving the doubters wrong, Isak back amongst the goals, and where Newcastle United go next. Thank you, as always, for joining. Thanks to our sponsors as well, NORD VPN, the perfect tool to keep you and your vital details stored on your laptop, phone, or whatever device you use, safe from hackers. Perfect, as Aaron will agree, to use in a public arena like St James's Park. No worries or scammers getting in and destroying a hard day's work. We've got a very special offer for our listeners and viewers. Just head to nordvpn.com/tune and take advantage of our offer, which will give you 4 extra months on your 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord, as you've got a 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast description box. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, nice to see you in person. How we doing?
Very good. What's that famous saying? Is it a week's a long time in politics? Well, actually, it's a week is a long time in football, isn't it? Because this time last week, what we were saying?
I was saying something, but unfortunately, it looks like we've got no image. So I'm going to have to just try and switch Wi-Fi, which is quite annoying. Hopefully, chaps, can you see us now? We're getting people in the comments saying no image. I'm hoping you can see us now. Is it any better? Yes, I think it is. Yes, sorry, you were saying, Aaron?
I was saying, what was I saying? Well, that famous saying that I was talking about, a week's a long time in politics, it's a week's a long time in football, isn't it? Because this time last week, it was all doom and gloom. We were pretty, pessimistic about the week to come after defeat at Stamford Bridge. And now we're sat here on the back of 2 unbelievable wins.
Yeah, a great week for Newcastle United. Unfortunately, the win, though, doesn't dissolve Aaron's pain that he's in. He's limping into the studio today like a man much older than he actually is.
Yeah, well, we did the pod last week, didn't we, over Zoom, and it's never as good as it. You know, I like it being in person, so I've hobbled myself in with this back problem that I've got because I thought we should celebrate a win in person rather than via technology.
Yes, indeed, and it is good to be back in the studio. Saturday, Newcastle United won, Arsenal, Alexander Isak with the goal. A superb result, a great performance. Tactically, Eddie Howe set his team up perfectly. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought he set it up fantastically well. I think obviously we'll go into the team sheet and who he started and the big decisions that he's not only made Saturday, but what he's got going forward. But, you know, he got the team spot on and he made some big decisions, dropping Sandwich and Ollie out, obviously the biggest of them all. But I thought the team was spot on. I thought the performance was spot on. Eddie Howe said it on Saturday when we spoke to him, and I think it was Alan Shearer who also said it as well over the weekend. It was the performance of that Champions League season, wasn't it? It was Newcastle of old, back to their best. Maybe not in terms of their free-flowing football, but in terms of their game management, their grit, their determination, their hunger. Maybe that little bit of nastiness was back. So yeah, fantastic. You know, as I said on Saturday's pod, it wasn't a game that was, you know, full of chances, but it was a game that Newcastle saw out really well defensively.
Yeah, it wasn't attractive football from Newcastle, but it was just resolute, wasn't it? Defensively, they were very strong and actually looked like the only team to score the game's second goal. I don't think it's a game that will live long in the memory, but at the same time, I think it's a performance that would get in to the list of Eddie Howe's top 10 performances as Newcastle United manager. It was that good. And afterwards, Eddie Howe said, I'm really pleased with our defensive performance, some heroic blocking. If you can't play a brilliant attacking football every week, you need to find a different way to win. And I think what we've seen over the last week is that Newcastle United can do that. You know, they can do the high press, the high intensity, and they can attack. But when they need to, they can sit back, invite teams on and say, come on then, come and break us down. And to have your team able to play 2-3 different ways, it's a hallmark of a good side.
Yeah, and I think just on that, the hallmark of how good the performance was defensively Saturday is the fact that you had all that Arsenal attacking talent. You know, Saka didn't have a peep. Martinelli really struggled. Havertz, who has been in quite good form this season, you know, not getting a sniff. And, you know, we were sort of scratching our heads in the press room after waiting for Eddie Howe to come in because we were saying, you know, can we actually remember Arsenal having a shot? We sort of worked out that the only shot on target they really had, if you can class it as that, is the one Lewis Hall blocked on the line from Mikel Merino. Apart from that, they really, really struggled to, one, break Newcastle down, test Nick Pope, and that just goes to show how resilient Newcastle were. Not just the back four as well, that midfield three was fantastic going the other way. And I mean, the likes of Anthony Gordon, yes, the cross and the assist will get the plaudits, but what he was doing without the ball, along with Joe Willock on the other side, deserves just as much credit.
Yeah, and certainly did not go unnoticed. I mean, the starting 11 in itself did spring up one or two surprises. I think a lot of people actually expected Lloyd Kelly to come in for Dan Burn, and that didn't happen. Although I think we said that with the expectation that actually Eddie Howe would play Dan Burn, so not maybe the biggest surprise. But the midfield three was definitely a big surprise, because if you had said to me, place a bet on, and that's a poor term of phrase actually, sorry, but place a bet on which man would start in the middle against Arsenal, I would have put it on Sandro Tonali to start. And he went for Longstaff, he went for Bruno, he went for Joe Willock. And look, it's irrelevant now because it clearly worked, but I didn't expect it. I just did not expect it. Did you expect Tonali on the bench?
No, I didn't. And I was surprised when the team came out. But then, sort of looking back at what Eddie Howe said 24 hours prior, he did sort of allude to the fact that, 3 games in a week is a lot for some of these players. I think it was maybe only Joelinton, Hall, Isak, maybe one other that played all 4 other than Pope in goal. So that maybe lessened my surprise once I sort of went back and read that. I thought, okay, I can understand why he's done it. I don't think it was any other reason than it was just, such a period of games and such a short period of time. So he's done very, very well. He's exerted a lot of energy in those first 2 games of the week. So I understand why he did it. I was still very surprised. But again, we're sat here saying it worked because, they've dropped out arguably the most informed midfielder, and the midfield threes worked absolutely perfectly.
Certainly so. And it seems like, and people might not want to hear this and they might not want to admit it, but the stats do not lie. Sean Longstaff is the key to a successful Newcastle United. In the games in which Longstaff has started this season, United have won 7 times and drawn once. They remain unbeaten every time he has started. Case of local lad done good, and not everyone will be pleased with it because he's had his critics, but my goodness me, Newcastle United seem to need him in the team.
Yeah, well, I was just about to pull those stats up and you beat me too, so thank you for that. We're probably going to go into this bit later in the episode, but I feel like it's just pertinent as you've just touched on it. You obviously asked the question this morning on Twitter for people to get in touch, and the big question of the week was, is Sean Longstaff, sorry, let me just get it up, is Sean Longstaff the key to Newcastle's midfield? And we've had quite a lot of responses in, and to say opinion is split is probably underselling it, because you've got one reply simply saying no, then you've got another reply saying yes, then you've got no, he's a good squad member, someone saying maybe. You've got a lot of answers and a lot of differences in opinion. Now, Eddie Howe sort of joked on Saturday after the game that if it was just as easy as starting Sean Longstaff and they'd win, he would do it every week. It isn't that simple. But as you say, the stats tell a big story, and that is Newcastle work a lot better when he's in the team from the start. Myself and my colleague Kieran Kelly were talking about it before the game on Saturday, and this isn't meant as a disrespect to Sean Longstaff, but sometimes it feels like a little bit of a pointless substitution bringing him on, because with Sandro Tonali you're going to get on a really good creator. With Joe Willock, if you bring him off the bench, you're going to get maybe a little bit of attack and impetus on the game. Longstaff, he just does the sort of quiet work that goes under the radar. So, look, people in the comments, people in our comments here, people replying to you, will debate till the cows come home whether he's the key. But, we say it every week. He doesn't deserve the stick around him. He doesn't deserve all that noise around him. He spoke very, very well about that after the game when he spoke to Lee Ryder and a couple of other journalists and just said, look, I know the noise that comes with me. I know people don't want me in the team, but Eddie Howe really trusts me. I really trust my own game. And thankfully, the stats back him up on that.
Yeah, indeed. And I'll go into a little bit of those responses that we had on Twitter. Eric wrote that he's the midfield glue. He holds the lines together and is always willing to provide cover. You need someone willing to run and cover to give the star players space. And he says far too much being made of Longstaff's influence, probably from the misleading stat about starts versus results, as we've mentioned. He's played well in the last couple of games, but running around a lot will never change a game in the way the other midfielders can. Gareth says against teams where we won't dominate the ball, he's very good to have as an option and excels in those games. But in games where we dominate the ball, he's not a good option as the other midfielders. Tom says he was the answer for this game. Newcastle continue to be our best fans and players when we run the dogs at home. He's not the answer against Everton, who show up to St James Park and sit back and say, break us down. In fact, they target him as the ball retention is poor. So it's split, but actually I think
there's a lot of good points in there.
Yeah, read out is fair analysis of the situation. You mentioned there what Eddie Howe had to say about Sean Longstaff, and he spoke at length about him actually in the press conference after the win over Arsenal. I'm going to play you a clip because I think it's a really interesting one about the stats that we've mentioned. And as you say, if it was as easy as playing Sean Longstaff every week to win, then he would do. But this is what he had to say about the stat that says, well, it's not says, it's true. Sean Longstaff in the Newcastle United side tends to mean they don't lose.
No, I don't think that's a coincidence from my side. I think statistically the team with Sean in it does have a really high percentage win. We do look at those types of things because sometimes it can give you a clue. It's not going to give you the answer, but it can just give you a clue around certain things. Sean does bring his qualities, as I said, his tactical understanding is second to none. He does help the team in lots of various ways, but there's other reasons for that. I don't think it's just as simple as put Sean in the team and you win. I wish it was that easy.
I do as well, Eddie. But he mentions there Sean's qualities. He mentions his tactical knowledge. But what are the qualities that he brings to the midfield to allow it to tick?
Well, somebody summed it up really well in one of those replies there, and it's that when Newcastle are maybe, camped without the ball for large periods of the game, his ability to cover those half spaces is fantastically solid. He does a lot of the dirty work, the nitty-gritty, the stuff without the ball. His tactical awareness is fantastic. And I was thinking before coming in the pod, because I knew we were going to be talking about the midfield, if you ask me about Joe Willock's performance, the first thing that stands out from Saturday is that gut-busting run down the left where he does the 1-2 with Joel and has the strike. When you ask me about Bruno, it's all the times he gets, the ball deep and he's pressed so tightly and he just gets out of those tight spaces. If you ask me what Sean Longstaff did on Saturday and stood out, I'd really be quite hard-pressed to find you one sort of individual.
I've got one.
You've got one?
I've got one. Late in the second half, and Arsenal, of course, were just having Newcastle up against the wall, weren't they? And just on the edge of the box, they come in from Newcastle's left, and he makes such an important interception. He's kind of down on one knee, and he stretches for it, and it's just 1 foot, gets the ball away, stops the attack. And for me, so important, because if Arsenal got through that bit of the space, we don't know what would have happened, but there would have been a chance for a goal. So, but I get the point you're making.
Point I make. Yeah,
it's not work that goes noticed. It's not flashy. It's never going to grab you the headlines, But we've had players down the years like that who have always been remembered fondly. Cheick Tiote is an example. He would be instrumental today in a team like this, where he could just sit there and protect the back four. And I was going to mention this later, actually, but it's really interesting if you look at the average position of both Bruno and Sean Longstaff on Saturday against Arsenal, and both of them are effectively playing as a number 6, sitting in front of the defence. And that's because obviously Arsenal were just coming wave after wave, but it gives you a little bit of insight into just maybe how Eddie Howe tweaked it, and maybe wasn't regimental in it and said, right, sit there, but maybe just came natural to them and just said, we are going to sit here and we're just going to sweep up anything that manages to break through the first defensive line. But yeah, really good from Sean Longstaff without maybe, as we say, grabbing the headlines. And we talk about expecting Tonali to play, and there's other options as well. And we've asked there, is Sean Longstaff key to the midfield? Basically, should he start from here on in? Is it that the midfield 3 for the foreseeable future? Now, Eddie Howe was asked about this in his press conference, and I was really impressed with his answer. We'll hear his answer first, and then I'll tell you why I was impressed, and then we'll get your answer, Aaron, to whether this is the midfield 3 going forward. So this is what Eddie Howe had to say about his midfield choices.
I think we've got very good players competing for a limited number of places. For me, the team overrides any individual. The team has to take priority. So you can think whatever you think about individual players, that the midfield or any area of the team that you're talking about has to function well together. I thought it did again today. I was really pleased. Joe Willock had something different. Sean had something different. Bruno had something different. Sandro does. They're all unique players. And then you missing out Joelinton, who's played wide and done an incredible amount of effort and work for the team in a different area of the pitch. So it's good to have those decisions. I'm sure there'll be a lot more debate as we move forward in the future.
Somebody coughing away there in the background. It wasn't me, by the way, ladies and gents. Seems like a bit of a winter bug going round. I mean, from that clip there, what stood out for me was the bit about the team. You know, it has to take priority. No individual is guaranteed to start in this side. And Eddie Howe often gets criticised for being too loyal to certain players. I actually think that's unfair. He said there, it's the team first. You know, 1 week Sandro Tonali will be the answer. The next week, Joe Willock. The next week, it might be Sean Longstaff. You know, he's effectively saying nobody is safe. Nobody's guaranteed to start. And I really like that because, like we say, that's been the criticism of him from some.
Yeah, it's definitely been thrown at him, hasn't it, around Longstaff and Byrne in particular, about having those favourites and sticking loyal to them. And I actually thought Eddie Howe spoke really well there, not only just about the team, but about, you know, the fact they all bring something different. In terms of the midfield three as a whole, I mean, I think I should probably just stop trying to predict it at all, because it was only a couple of weeks ago when they drew against Manchester City, and I sat in this exact spot talking to you saying, this is the three they need to go for. Sandro, Bruno and Joelinton. We've seen it work. It was fantastic. Are we going to finally see it click? We've obviously spoke at length about what Sean Longstaff offers. Joe Willock has done fantastically well to come back into the picture. Joelinton equally is looking just as comfortable out on the left as he is in the middle. He's also, by the way, looking very comfortable at left back and left centre back and right wing and right back, wing back, which is fantastic to see. So, look, I think we just probably have to understand that it's going to be a very fluid situation. I don't think he's going to be penciled in or, you know, sort of pigeonholed into picking three and sticking with them. I think it depends on the opposition, as somebody rightly alluded to in the comments there about Longstaff. He's maybe not the answer to every single game. We know that he's trying really, really hard to manage Sandro Tonali's minutes because he maybe doesn't think he's up there. Joe Willock was brought off on Saturday after the hour because he had a cramp. He's not at full speed yet. So it's just good. I mean, it's quite refreshing, as some would say, to be sitting here after spending most of August and most of September, and this isn't just me and you, this is everyone, moaning about the summer window and how we've got a lack of competition, to actually saying, well, you know what, they've got 5 of them that could start in the middle of the park now, and Lewis Miley's, you know, slowly starting to come back as well. So really, really good to see that midfield three working on Saturday. But just please stop asking me to pick the three, because I'm close to giving up.
If you're Sandro Tonali, I mean, if you're any of those midfielders who can play across the middle of the park, and Eddie Howe saying to probably every single one of them, maybe except Bruno, because maybe I think Bruno probably is the exception. He's captain. He's going to play, isn't he? But Eddie Howe says, look, to the rest of you, you are not guaranteed to start. It's going to be based on who we are playing more than anything. That's how we win games. Do you look at that and get a little bit frustrated? Because you look around the top teams and they all have their set midfield, the majority of them. And yes, they'll adapt for certain games, but you can probably bet your last penny on who's going to play in Man City's midfield, for example, or Arsenal's midfield, you know, injuries and suspensions aside. But if you're Tonali, your Longstaff, your Willock, do you look at Eddie Howe's approach and think that's really refreshing? Because if I'm not in from the start this week, I might be in the start next week, you know, or I can affect the game more if it's against a team that dominates than rather if it's a team that doesn't. Or do you look at it and you think, well, actually, I want to nail down this place. You know, I played well last week. Why aren't I playing this week from the start?
Well, you'll be unsurprised to hear that I'm slightly on the fence about it, because, you know, at the start of the season, I really wanted that midfield three of Sandro, Joelinton and Bruno to be the way forward, because they're the best three, and I think you've got to keep them happy to tie them down. But actually, I think Howe's got it quite right in the last couple of weeks by definitely saying to these players, you know, nobody in this team is safe, because Sean Longstaff has really raised his game. Joe Willock has come back really determined to win his place back. And Eddie Howe, I always remember a couple of weeks ago, he started Joe Willock at Wolves, didn't he? And he really shouldn't have, and it really didn't work. And he came out after the game and said, I hold my hands up. Joe Willock had a fantastic week in training and I started him and I shouldn't. So I think you've got to find that balance between making sure it's definitely right for the team. They haven't just had a good week. You know, it didn't work at Wolves. It won't work every week. But I think on Saturday it worked fantastically well. And I know we'll probably get onto it, but the last 2 games in particular, that left side of Joelinton, Willock and Hall has just looked so, so good. And really, I mean, when the team came out on Saturday, we were sort of, and on Wednesday, we were sort of and ahhing as to who would be where. And I don't think they actually have set positions. I think it's either Willock in centre mid or on the left, and I think it's Joelinton predominantly in the middle, but also we saw him as I said, left back, left wing.
We saw that within the first half against Arsenal. There was at one point he was kind of playing right back or right centre back, and then he was over in the middle, and then he was over.
He was helping Lewis Hall so much in that first half with Saka, but then you'd see him overlapping Joe Willock on the left, and then you had Willock dropping in to help Hall. It was, I sort of asked Eddie about it at the end of the game because it's really interesting with Willock, and Eddie Howe always talks about the relationship he's got with Joelinton and Isak more than most, and I think Willock on the pitch makes those two much better. Certainly Alexander Isak going forward. And how often have we said, especially last season when it was Dan Burn at left back, that Willock Joelinton combination of helping him, it just makes that team or that side certainly tick so much better.
I think what it is, if it's Sean Longstaff, Bruno and Joe Willock is the one with the pace and the drive to get the ball forward. Sean, more often than not, will play it safe, and there's nothing wrong with that. You need that kind of player on your side as well for the balance, either sideways, backwards. Bruno likes to hold on to it maybe a little bit more, look maybe for that key killer pass, which again you need that. But with Joe Willock, I think you know exactly what you're going to get. He's going to just try and drive the team forward, and we saw that against Chelsea. We saw that as well against Arsenal. There was a beautiful pass in the first half where it comes from Newcastle's box, and Joe Willock doesn't even look, and he knocks it over to Gordon on the right. First time, it was a beautiful pass. And then the chap sitting next to me was saying, this is what it used to be like, where they weren't even looking when they were passing. They just knew where each other were. It comes with confidence, of course, but it was really nice from Joe Willock. But yeah, interesting here, Eddie Howe's approach there. Keeps the door open for players not in the starting 11, but also keeps the opposition guessing as well. But we talked about their Sean and Bruno and their average positions against Arsenal, kind of both playing as a number 6 effectively. And you can see in the stats, 6 tackles for Sean. Bruno won 12 duels. They were really keen just keeping Arsenal quiet, and Arsenal could not break them down at all.
Yeah, they really couldn't. I mean, it was a game where we knew the sort of midfield battle would be crucial. That's 2 times in as many seasons that the likes of Declan Rice and Jorginho have came to St James's Park and really not had a sniff. I mean, Declan Rice, apart from when he crept round at the back post with seconds left, it was hardly in the game at all. And it was good to see. I mean, Peter probably won't agree with me, but it was good to see Newcastle get that edge over Arsenal's midfield without the same sort of feistiness that there was last season. There wasn't a flashpoint in the game like last year when Havertz sort of got Newcastle's backs up with that challenge on Longstaff. There wasn't that sort of Rice, Bruno, Jorginho sort of nastiness about the game. It was just Newcastle being better with the football at their feet and better defensively than their opposition.
Well, I think we all expected a flashpoint because there's definitely been a bit of needle in recent games between the two. But whether there was a word said before the game, let's just let the football do the talking, because there was a moment when Bruno got a whack to the face, and I haven't seen it back, but seen it, the ones I did from the stands, it looked pretty nasty, and he goes down, gets straight back up, and you just think that Bruno, of even just a few weeks ago, he wouldn't have let that lie, but he seemed to be switched on and just got up and walked away from it, which really stood out for me, because like I say, the old Bruno, well, not even the old Bruno, the recent Bruno probably would have been looking for a bit of retribution.
Yeah, I thought they managed the game absolutely beautifully. It was perfect. They didn't let themselves to get drawn into those sort of reckless things like we've seen earlier this season with Fabian Schär and stuff like that. And, this fixture in the last couple of seasons has thrown up some really tense, games full of needle. And, it was to an extent on Saturday, but not as much as we've seen. And there wasn't any silliness from Newcastle United. They just got the job done as they needed to. Yeah, really, really assured performance.
And just the last kind of word on the starting 11, as we said, Lloyd Kelly was expected by most to come in. Didn't happen. Stuck with Schär, stuck with Burn. They didn't have really anything to do. I mean, obviously there was a few blocks in there, but really being tested didn't happen on Saturday. I think they're going to have a much more difficult game against Forest on Sunday with the likes of Chris Wood scoring for fun. It certainly seems that those two are Eddie Howe's pairing for the foreseeable future until Sven Botman gets back to fitness.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even then, we won't see Sven Botman fully back up to speed, especially not knowing Eddie Howe's history with sort of easing players back in. So, it probably begs the question as to, the question that we're probably sick of talking about as to what they do in January in terms of, do they keep that focus on a central defender as it was in the summer? Do they, maybe put their resources elsewhere? But again, I thought Burn didn't put a foot wrong. I, like you, wouldn't have been surprised or all that bothered if Kelly had came back in. I thought he was absolutely fantastic against Chelsea. But I think we've seen that back five now is settled. And I think a word for Kieran Trippier, who came back in, won his spot back, did very well at the start of the season. He's going to really struggle now to get back in.
Yep,
Andrew grins as I say that.
And I'll tell you what, I've got another thing to ask you later in the show about a prediction that I made, but we'll get onto that in a moment.
About selling Joe Willock, is that?
No. I think it's a big few months for Joe. I genuinely,
let's talk about that because
he's been cracking this week. He has, and I'm going to make the point as well later. I'll make it now. To be fair,
are you tying my feet back to the ground on Joe Willock?
Yeah, because what we need to see is him get a consistent run of games in the side. And these performances happen week after week after week. And that's easier said than done. I still think it's a big few months for him because we don't want to see him be a flash in the pan. We don't want to see him have a good month and then it tails off and we don't see it again for the rest of the season. I'm not saying he's not going to have, the rest of the season at a high level. I'm just saying I think he still needs it.
And he needs to stay fit.
Yeah. And he's shown what he can do. And look, if he continues to perform like he has done for the last two games.
You'll apologise on this pod.
I'll apologise. I'll hold my hands up. I'll say I'm wrong. There's no reason why England can't come calling for him either. He's a very talented player. It's never been about me doubting his ability and talent.
Yeah.
It's about me looking at who Newcastle United could possibly sell to raise funds, but also B, looking at this chap's fitness because we've been stung.
And consistency.
Yeah, and consistency. We've been stung with Callum Wilson, giving him a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chance. I'm just done with it. I think Newcastle United are at a stage in the project where you can't afford now to keep rolling the dice and hoping it's going to work. If a player isn't fit enough to consistently perform for this club on the journey that they are heading in, then you need to cut them loose, unfortunately. Now, Joe Willock, I am hopeful, and I think he's got a big future, long future here at Newcastle United. What I'm saying is, it's a big few months for him, but hopefully he can prove me wrong. But also, I was going to make it a little point, I'll make it anyway. You tweeted after the game, Newcastle United are back. You said that in the podcast, but are Newcastle
United back? See, I'm glad you brought this up. We had a bit of a disagreement. Well, not a disagreement, but I don't think I said anything on the pod Saturday that was too outrageous. I didn't say they were back. I said they were firmly back on track, which they are after a big week. And look, they aren't back. They aren't at the levels they once were. They need to do it on a consistent basis. But after spending weeks moaning about the performances not matching the results and then, they're playing well but not getting the results, it's good to see that they're actually playing well again and playing like they were in that season to qualify for the Champions League. But, they've got to go to the City ground and have a really tough crack at Forest. And then after that international break, they really need to kick on.
That's the point, because I think, you maybe didn't say Newcastle United are back. You've corrected me, but I've seen a lot of people this week saying, we're back. But in isolation of this game or even the week just gone, it's been superb, but it's just two games. Yeah. It's two massive wins, two huge performances, but that's all it is. As you mentioned, Newcastle face Forest on Sunday. It's going to be a bigger task than Arsenal because of the form Forest are in. We can celebrate and we can enjoy a great win against Arsenal, great performance and progress in the Cup with Brentford next up. But now you aren't back. That's going to take a run of games and a run of wins. And, even if we beat Forest and beat West Ham, I'm still not saying we're back because it takes more than 4 or 5 games. It's about, performing consistently well over 2 months, 6 weeks. And then you can say, you know what, we are back. Don't get us wrong. A lot to like against Arsenal. It was very much like Newcastle United 2 seasons ago. But actually, as Eddie Howe says in this clip here, we can't just have it, every now and then. We need to have it on a consistent basis. This is what he had to say about how to take Newcastle United to the next level.
That's the key for us. We don't want it to be a one-win isolated moment where we're happy with ourselves. It's back-to-back wins for us at home against 2 top-quality teams. That's really pleasing, but we now know Nottingham Forest takes huge priority for us, and if we can end this period of games with another positive result, it leaves us in a great place.
Love it. Absolutely love it. He's spot on with what he says there. As soon as the lads got into training on Monday morning, it would have been well done for Saturday, but let's concentrate on Forest now. We can't rest on the performance that's just gone. We need to continue this, keep that momentum going, and fingers crossed they can. But it's going to be a huge challenge.
Yeah, huge challenge. And look, for certain that Eddie Howe will have been back at Benton on Sunday morning, watching Arsenal back and plotting for Sunday. And he'd been listening to my solo pod from Saturday and saying, Aaron, you're right, we're back on track, but we're not back, as I said. But you're right, big couple of weeks. They need to make sure this isn't a flash in the pan. We all said after Man City, look, they're going to kick on now. We all said at the start of the season, how good are the results going to be when they start actually putting performances in? They need to match up. We saw it Brighton, we saw it Everton. They can play well and not win. But I just keep going back to last Monday and sitting here on that pod and thinking, how big of a period it was. And it does, I know we haven't touched on it yet, and I'm sort of surprised, but it's sort of easy to forget because of how good the week's been. But had the results not gone this way, the way they have this week, there would have been a real pressure starting to build, rightly or wrongly, on how. So I just think it's good for everything. It's good for us. It's good for the fans. It's good for Howe and the players. That little bit of pressure has been lifted.
Certainly so. And they were creating the chances, but they weren't getting the goals. I always felt that they would pick up eventually. Did I expect them to beat Arsenal? No, I thought they'd get a point. I expected them to go through against Chelsea in the cup. I thought they would do, and they have done. But you're right, just to lift that pressure is absolutely superb. But as we say, you just got to keep building on it, keep it going. Fingers crossed they can do. Now, we haven't spoken about the goal yet, and what a goal it was. Fabian Schär knocks the ball long to Joe Willock. It's headed down into the path of Alexander Isak, who's 15, 20 yards outside the box, gives it to Sean Longstaff, passes to Anthony Gordon. First time cross, sublime. Isak heads home. The header has shades of Tino Asprilla against Barcelona, with Kiska Gillespie providing the assist that night. But what I love about it, the fact that Isak, after laying the ball off to Sean Longstaff, continues his run into the box. Most players, and strikers included, will just kind of stand there and maybe a little jog, but he's got desire, he's got want, he's into that box, and he's there to meet the cross. Absolutely wonderful goal.
Beautiful goal, wasn't it? Absolutely fantastic. Alexander Isak, I was watching it back the other day, and there's just a slight moment in the box where he just loses Gabriel, and Gabriel, who, by the way, might be a little bit out of form at the minute, but is one of the Premier League best centre-backs, and Alexander Isak loses him with ease, beats him in the air with ease, fantastic header, but the praise needs to go to Gordon. I'm sorry. What an assist. I mean, we've been banging on for weeks about how Gordon isn't a right winger. If he can put crosses in like that every week, I will subscribe to the notion that he needs to be playing on the right, not the left, because that was just very fitting of Nobby Solano being in the crowd. I thought Nobby Solano was there on Saturday as a guest of Newcastle, and he will have been very, very proud of that one. Fantastic goal.
Certainly so. Yeah. And I think for me, what it does, it reaffirms the need, if not in January, then the summer, to go out and get another striker to compete with Alexander Isak, because what we saw in that moment of the goal is a reminder that by playing Anthony Gordon in the centre as the striker is a detriment to Newcastle United, because look at his crossing ability. He's in the centre, you lose that. And if somebody is putting that level of crossing into the box, he's often not there, because what he's done is either he's gone out to the flank and try and get the ball, he's not in the middle of the box, and look, his heading ability isn't
great.
Have the
same instincts.
They need someone there that can just do what Isak can do, that can make the most of Gordon out on the flank. I think it's a timely reminder.
Well, just on that, sorry to go slightly off track, but surprised to see Isak play 90 minutes on Saturday, because I thought towards the second half he started to look a little bit leggy. I thought when the game was just starting to maybe turn and Arsenal were pressing, I thought, is it time for Asula? He didn't do it. He rolled the dice against Chelsea and gave him half an hour, probably because they were 2-0 up. But
no, not surprised at all. Surprised at all. I think given the opposition, and that a game plan needs to be stuck to, and I think as much as I can understand the need and the want for Asula to come off the bench because he's actually looking tired, I think in Eddie Howe's mind, Isak operating at 67% is probably still better in his mind. And look, he's the manager, he sees him doing that. Then Asula coming on, does he trust Asula to stick to the game plan? I don't know.
There was just a couple of moments towards the end of the game when Newcastle were maybe breaking, And there was a chance to really punish Arsenal, who were throwing men forward. And I just thought Isak just looked a tiny bit off it. He looked like a man who has played 3 games in a week. And I just thought Asula's legs and fitness might have been the way to go. But look, it doesn't matter. But it just goes back to your point of, needing a second choice striker who Eddie Howe isn't afraid to throw on. And on Isak, again, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. He's not back. He's back on track. But after sitting here after that Brighton game and saying, how did he not get a hat-trick or more? 3 in 3 games, he's looked good. His finishes look sharp. His movement looks good. Hopefully, he's back on track now.
Yeah, and so important that he gets back to his best, but he lets the football do the talk and forget about Champions League, forget about transfers and new contracts. Just do it on the pitch, and the rest will follow. So in many ways, it looks like he's maybe seen the response of Eddie Howe of last week, when all the talk of a new contract stalling was that, and Eddie Howe was asked about it, and he effectively said, well, look, if he's not doing it on the pitch, he's not getting a new deal. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I think he's heard that, and he's gone, okay, I'll show you what I can do.
Yeah, very much so. And look, it was a bold thing for Howe to say. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on the pod, but I did feel like the sort of contract thing was being overblown. He's here till 2028 at the minute. I don't have any real issues with the fact the contract talks have stopped, but if Eddie Howe wanted a response to those comments, he's certainly got it. And yeah, look, he looks like a player who's settled. And Arsenal, they need a striker after Saturday's display. Arteta was actually asked about it after the game. And I mean, Arteta's press conference was one of the shortest and bluntest I've heard. He did not want to be there, but he completely shut down the talk of a striker. But I think you look at that team and they are missing Alexander Isak. They're missing a goal scoring 9. Yeah,
but it'll cost them a lot of money if they want our Alexander Isak. We've got Gary in the comments saying Asula seems the right character and seems to be in a great place. He's going to be a right handful as he progresses in his development.
Well, obviously we haven't done a pod, have we, together since the Chelsea win. Really, really good cameo from him on Wednesday, wasn't it? The best he's performed in a competitive game, I think.
You're confident as well.
Wish that goal went in when he hit the post. But there was a moment actually shortly after where Livramento should have played him in. He overlaps, he sprints, he busts a gut to get there. And Livramento goes with the pass to Joelinton, and Asula's screaming at him to pass the ball.
Missed by the cameras, that one, wasn't it?
Missed by the cameras, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a good moment. It was an excellent moment. Somehow I managed to see it at home. Graham says, about time a modern player crossing first time. Way too often players wanting that extra touch, maybe the first time, and quickness of the cross caught Arsenal out. Yeah, a lot of people have been saying that. Shez says, I think the goals will come. The most important hurdle was providing scoring chances, and we've done that. 2 back-to-back wins should give us that bounce to get back to our old goal scoring ways. Thank you very much for the comments. Continue to drop them into the box if you're watching live, and even if you're not and you're watching later on YouTube, leave your comments. I will get back to absolutely every single one of you. We do appreciate your support. We had from the moment that goal went in, I never thought Newcastle were going to lose the game. Arsenal were absolutely pathetic. And look, I'm all for it because it made Newcastle's job a lot easier. And look, it was largely down to the way Newcastle set up. They just stifled Arsenal. But there was such a lack of creativity and ideas from Arsenal. I was really, really surprised at just how, as you say, toothless they were. But we've got to pay tribute to Newcastle United's fullbacks, Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall. Either one of them could have been man of the match. They were brilliant against Saka and Martinelli. And let's not beat around the bush here. Saka and Martinelli could pretty much walk into any Premier League side. 10 duels, 1 out of 14 for Lewis Hall, 7 out of 8 for Tino Livramento. Neither one of those wingers get the better of them.
No, I'm really surprised we've got so long into the pod and haven't spoken about, as you say, 2 who were definitely up there for man of the match. Lewis Hall obviously won it. I think he was probably mine on the day. Just fantastic. And I think we touched on it at the very start. Lewis Hall was helped massively by Joelinton and Willock and their defensive efforts. But Lewis Hall, with every passing week, he just looks more confident. He looks more sure. He looks like he's 28, not 20. He just looks like he's been in this team for years. And I was going to ask Eddie Howe about it on Saturday, and someone beat me to it, a journalist, because essentially they said, at the start of the season, Lewis Hall was in a battle for left back with Lloyd Kelly, wasn't he? Because Lloyd Kelly started 2 or 3 of those early games in the Premier League. He's just taken that position and ran with it. He's one of the first names on the team sheet. He is just fantastic on the ball. He's so composed. His defensive awareness has got so much better. Really, really enjoying it. And a lot of people have said it, but, you know, it's understandable when Newcastle make signings. We want to see them. We want to see them now. We don't want to have to wait. But Eddie Howe has played it spot on with him. He knew he wasn't ready at the start. They've worked on him behind the scenes. Eddie Howe told us on Saturday that he's been doing a lot of double training sessions. He's been doing a lot of analysis of his own game after training. And he's just now up to speed with how to play alongside these teammates on the big occasions. He looks fantastic. I thought he was deserved man of the match. He was fantastic in the cup game against Chelsea. Just, he looks an absolute snip, doesn't he, at 28 million. And is this the last? This might be the last pod we do before the England team gets announced. He's got to be in that squad this month. I'm sure he will be.
When does that get announced? Thursday?
Thursday, I believe, yeah.
Every week we see him just saying he's just getting better and better with every passing game. He was absolutely brilliant. And what it does, it actually gives you hope that the William Asula approach is the right one. We've all been at points of the season crying out for him. Why isn't he starting him there? Why is he not starting him ahead of Anthony Gordon?
Yeah.
And you just look at the development of Lewis Hall and you say, look, if we've not got to see Asula for a year or however long, but he turns out like Lewis Hall is playing currently, then we take it.
Yeah, Eddie Howe said something on Saturday along those lines of, look, it was a transfer that we knew was going to be for the future. We knew we were going to have to bide our time with him. And Eddie Howe's made, you know, no bones about the fact he sort of felt the same about Asula. I remember being in that first press conference with Howe when Asula had signed or been announced 5 or 10 minutes earlier. And Eddie Howe straight out the bat said, there's a lot of work to do. He's raw, but we think he's a talent for the future. They saw that with Lewis Hall, and it's paying off.
With Tino Livramento, he was my man of the match. 5 out of 5 ground duels, 4 tackles, just superb. You feel like though he needed that performance as well because he's coming for a little bit of criticism. The game down Stamford Bridge, you could argue, he was a little bit caught out by Pedro Neto for the first Chelsea goal. So it was kind of a perfectly timed outing for him, and the way he performed was absolutely brilliant. That will do him the world of good. Shut up his critics as well and just remind them of how good of a player he actually is. Yeah,
I've just got a stat here. 100% of his tackles won, 100% of his aerial duels won, 100% of his ground duels won. Martinelli wasn't getting past Livramento in that first half, is the comment. He did need that performance because, as you said, we've all been waxing lyrical about Hall for weeks, haven't we? And we've maybe just forgotten about, well, no one's forgotten how good he is, but he just needed that performance to maybe come back into the spotlight a little bit, especially with that England squad coming up, as we've just alluded to about Hall. There's, you know, so much more competition at right back than there is at left back at the minute at England. It sort of feels like Lewis Hall can walk into that position sort of untested, but Livramento's got obviously real talent to go up against. So really good performance. Martinelli had not a sniff the entire game. So yeah, really, really positive.
Because it got to the stage where some were even saying Emil Kraft should come in and start ahead of him.
Well,
John Gibson was one of those.
If I'm honest, I'll hold my hands up. And if Eddie Howe had started the same team that started against Chelsea on Saturday, I would have been sat there saying it's the right decision. Yeah. And he didn't. He made changes. He brought the players back in that he needed to, and Livramento, you know, showed him why.
Right, because it's just, I mean, they're so young, but it's such a test of character, and it shows you maybe just how mature they actually are. That they'll not be naive to the noise around. You know, he will have seen, he would have heard it, or he's not at his best, or I saw someone last week saying he's gone back, you know, since he's joined. What's happened? There's always a bit of an overreaction, but, you know, Emil Kraft should start. So he's got that going, but then you are literally facing one of the best wingers in the Premier League. So to actually come out on top and the way he did with such fantastic stats, absolutely fantastic. And look, you say Lewis Hall, I say Tino Livramento. People in the comments could name Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock. You know, the amount of players you could pick for man of the match, you're talking 5 or 6 yet again.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wrote down in my notes for the pod on Saturday, Hall, Tino, Willock, Longstaff, Joe and Gordon. You could say all of them could arguably deserve it. Again, like Chelsea midweek, there wasn't really anyone that stood out as having a bad game. You know, 2 perfect performances from Newcastle in the space of 4 days.
Yeah, indeed. United really did look like the only side to score again in the game. Willock, Isak, Joe Linton having chances, which is really good to see when you're being penned in, because I think sometimes, Evan, when you're in games like this, when one team's backed in, if you're the team with the ball trying to break down the defence and you know the opposition can't offer a threat, and when they do get the ball, that kind of works in your favour. It's a psychological thing. And on Saturday, Arsenal knew As soon as they lost the ball, Gordon, Willock, Joe Linton would break. And
Yeah.
that alters just how much you can really put into trying to break Newcastle down. So it was really, really important that they showed you can't give us the ball here, Arsenal, because we're gonna go at such a pace, and they did do.
Yeah, and there was so many times in the game where Arsenal were having to be so patient with that build-up, but Newcastle was so solid defensively. Every man knew where they needed to be. Arsenal. How many times did they actually break through that back line? You know, really, you could probably count it on one hand the amount of times they actually got in behind Newcastle. And yeah, I've just completely lost my chain of thought about what I was going to say there.
Just how
But yeah,
good they were on the counter, really, and being
Yeah,
able to absorb Arsenal, and just how that really plays into the hands of a team who has to sit back.
it does, yeah. And especially we saw with Willock, as we touched on at the very start, there was that moment where he broke away and it probably did himself more harm because he came off soon after, probably exerted too much energy. And as you say, with Gordon down the other side, Livramento on the other flank, the options for Newcastle to break were endless. So just a really, really solid, assured performance. There was very little negatives, to point at, really.
I don't think there were any. Were there? I think
If Declan Rice had scored in the last
but
minute,
that's
because
just
it's
football,
a
isn't it?
sitter, then I think you could probably say Fabian Schär maybe just switched off for a second. But look, he's played 95 minutes exceptionally. He missed out. And Nick Pope's kicking just annoyed me a little bit. But that is me literally
But
nitpicking.
you are not going to change
That's me nitpicking, honestly. The rest was good.
That's Nick Pope. He's
I
kicking
know
us
we
awful.
won't change it,
Not
but
gonna
in the
change
modern
it.
game, you need to try and change it, and you need to be
I-
working on that behind the scenes.
I was really pleased for Nick Pope, actually, because against Chelsea on Wednesday, every time the ball was in the air, he looked so shaky. He did not look confident. But against Arsenal, there was 3 or 4 chances where he really had to come out and dominate the box. And the final cross into the box by, I think it was Saka, and he wins it. He's
Just
down.
collapses on the floor.
Like, he looked so much more assured in that game when the ball's in the air than he did against Chelsea. And again, I think that's probably a big game for him in terms of that, because he didn't look at his best against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge or in the cup either, I don't think. The options, though, well, actually, you mentioned there Fabian Schär. There was a moment in the first half where he's totally out of position, dives in, and you maybe mentioned
So there was a negative.
well, no, it's not more of a negative, because again, the defense, they were good, especially the fullbacks. But Fabian Schär, he's interesting.
You're not convinced by him this season, are you?
No,
I feel like you're seeing
start of the season, I would have said give him a new deal without a shadow of a doubt. But I just think the last month or so, he's falling off the level, and I'm now just thinking, whereas we thought, left-sided centre-back, do we need to go out and see a right-sided centre-back come in? Do we give Fabian Schär a new deal?
Yeah, I think we give him a new deal. Definitely, I don't think he's been anywhere near as bad as to not earn a new deal if he wants one. It begs the question: do you think the right-sided centre half needs to be back on the table?
Yeah, I do actually. I do. Which
Top
is
of the list?
No, not top of the list, because I
Second
think
on the list,
probably third on the list.
behind
Right wing
striker.
on it, because I think Fabian Schär will.
You think they've got enough till the end of the season?
He'll have a bad spell. He'll probably come back to his best, but then I do think there are probably bigger questions to be asked in the summer. But yeah, look, nothing to complain about.
I feel. I mean, this isn't the first time you've mentioned it. You've been uber consistent on this the last couple of weeks. I feel like against City, I'm just going to have 90 minutes of watching Fabian Schär to see what I'm not seeing, because I think he's been good. Apart from literally, as I said, I think he switched off for the Rice chance at the end, but you can forgive him that because it doesn't matter. But I just haven't seen what you've seen the last couple of weeks.
It's just little things which I think, if you're a professional footballer, are the basics. So against Chelsea, it was a mixture of him and Sean Longstaff allowing.
Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, he didn't have a very good game, did he? But
there was a moment against Arsenal where he's out of position and he totally, I think he slips, and there's just little things which I think, if you're heading towards the top 4 and you want to be there consistently, there's a difficult conversation to be had about Fabian Schär, because he's 32. Sentimentally, you go, he's earned a new deal, but also
he's not the long-term answer, is
no.
Everybody knows he's not the long-term.
I think there's a bigger point that I'm trying to make. Sorry, is that I think conversations have to be had across the board about the progress, and certain players might not be here as long as we might think they may be, because it's time to get ruthless, essentially. But anyway, that's for down the road.
They've got enough in Schär, Byrne, Botman coming back, Kraft, to say, okay, if they don't sign a centre back in January, it's not the end of the world. I think they should still be signing one, but as you say, I think I would probably agree with that hypothetical list we've just made up.
I just want to mention Sandro Tonali. I thought the options off the bench were there. The depth really started to show, but Tonali, I felt really made a difference when he came off the bench.
Yeah, again, because we haven't spoken since the cup game. I mean, how good was he on Wednesday against Chelsea in the middle of the park? He was fantastic when he came on. He offers, such energy from the bench. Not that I want to see him starting from the bench too often. Somebody, again, just going back to those comments that we asked for on Twitter, somebody made a good point that I was going to read out about Tonali. And it was along the lines of, I don't think he's as good on the right side of the centre midfield as Longstaff is, which means essentially Eddie Howe's got a decision to make between Tonali or Bruno in the middle. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Tonali's actually looked quite good as a right-sided 8. But if Longstaff's going to be starting again, it does mean, is Tonali the man to drop out?
Potentially, but then, you've got him off the bench to make the difference like he did do. Just want to ask you, would you say Tonali's back to his best right now? Was Wednesday the game against Chelsea without him at his best, you think?
I think Wednesday was probably his best game of the season.
Good. Just thinking about a prediction that I made earlier in the summer when you laughed at us.
What did I laugh at?
I said you wouldn't see Tonali back to his best till November. Just have to bring it out. No, look, if you're going to have a go at me in a public arena.
So you're saying he's been pro up to that point, has he?
I think.
I
think. Not
talk about trying to fit your agenda.
I think pro is the wrong term of phrase. I just don't think he's at the level we know he can be at. That's understandable. But my point was, he's
back on track. He's not back to his best.
We're just going to read some of the comments that we've got from people live. Thank you very much for tuning in. Gary says, with Willock and Joe Linton playing so well on the left and Gordon giving us a good option on the right, Barnes must be disappointed to be further back in the pecking order. Do we sell? Now, Simon Bird mentioned this a few weeks ago. We wrote it up. We also clipped it up as a video and we put it out. And the stick that we got was unbelievable. And I thought
so.
It was
just give him context. So it was it was Simon Bird essentially saying he's the man they could cash in on or should cash in on.
It wasn't saying, he's been rubbish, cashing it. It was Newcastle United may need to raise extra funds to fund January.
Yeah.
Who can Newcastle United sell? There, Harvey Barnes. If he's not going to be first choice ahead of Gordon and maybe ahead of Joe Linton, then do Newcastle United look to sell? Does he push to go? Maybe it's all about opinions. We got a lot of stick for that, but I'm seeing people in the comments now maybe just suggesting it's time for him to go. I don't think, for what it's worth, he'll be sold in January. I think it's just down him to get his head down and work really hard.
I don't even think it's a conversation about selling him. I think it's a conversation as to what on earth does he do to get back in this team now, because he's behind Gordon in the pecking order. If they had a functioning right winger who's going to play him week in, week out, he's now, you'd say it, in the balance of the last 2 games, probably behind Joe Linton in the pecking order because of how well he's playing out there. Joe Willock looks equally as good out there. He's slipping down that pecking order, and he had a good start the season, but it was maybe a little bit of a flash in the pan, and he's dropped off. He needs to work to get that position back, to get that game time back.
But players will be in and out of form, and
you're still convinced, aren't you? He's going to come.
Yeah, because I think he's such a good player that he scores goals, he can create goals, and I think his time will come again. It's just about him seizing the opportunity, and that's been his biggest downfall. And people say, "Well, look, he scored 3 goals?" Is it? Yeah, he has, but he didn't really do much else out of that, and I think he's probably been, I'm not going to use the word disappointed. I think he'll be disappointed in himself that he hasn't done more with the games he's had.
Oh, absolutely, because he started so well, didn't he? He came off the bench at Wolves. He turned the game on its head. He had a really good run on the left as a starter when Gordon was out on the right or when Gordon was playing through the middle, and he just didn't capitalise on it. He should have said, took that, ran with it, made that position his own. He hasn't, and now, as we've just said, other players have started playing that position and look much better. So I think he will be disappointed. Obviously, we know what happened last season. That wasn't his fault, of such a freak injury. But again, it's coming to that time where, is he running out of time? If somebody comes in the summer and says they'll give you 40 million for him, do you take it?
£2 million profit? I don't know. I think it would be considered. It's just all
big,
about.
It's like we said about Willock at the start of the episode. Big run of games for him.
It depends. Big periods for him. If Newcastle are in Europe next season, then they will keep him because you need that squad. So there's loads of elements to that answer. But let us know in the comments your thoughts. I tell you one thing though, Miguel Almiron is so far away from this first team. It is unbelievable, because I was watching the game on Saturday and thinking, is now the right time to introduce Mickey because he gives you that energy, gives you those legs. You can tell him exactly what to do and he will follow it to the letter. He's disciplined like that. Okay, he might be 6 yards out of goal and miss, but he's going to put the defensive work in. He warms up. I mean, he's not getting his opportunities at all. I mean, for me, it looks like his future's all but done in Newcastle.
Yeah, I'd agree. He hasn't taken his opportunity when he's had sort of rare glimpses in the team. You could say the same about Jacob Murphy, you know, who started the season, had a fantastic preseason, started the season out on the right in that team, and again now he looks way off it. I know he's obviously been missing the last 2 games with a slight injury, but he's done nothing to nail down that spot, has he? So, I mean, that's the priority. We don't need to go over all ground. That's the transfer priority.
Robert says, can't understand why Harvey Barnes is not getting many minutes. Has something happened behind the scenes? Nope, he's just not being picked by Eddie Howe. It's as simple as that. Stephen says, with Joe Linton, Willock, Bruno Tonali, Longstaff and Miley, did we really miss Elliot Anderson? Would he have gotten any game time? And I suppose that's the big question ahead of this weekend. And that's probably answered there by Stephen in the last line of his question, is how many minutes would Elliot Anderson actually have got in this midfield 3, potentially on the wing?
Probably the same as he got last season.
Yeah, so
limited, I think.
Just one of those, isn't it?
I think the bigger question to be asking is, do we still miss Chris Wood? Is he the second choice striker that we were crying out for?
He looks sublime, doesn't he?
He does look bang form.
Alan says, Willock and Joe Linton go together like Laurel and Hardy. They dovetail so well, and now with Lewis Hall getting better and better, it's a joy to watch going forward. Brilliant. Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with you there. Let us know in the comments, what is the future of Harvey Barnes? Let us know in the comments what you think the team will be as well for Sunday. Will we've missed Elliot Anderson? Lousy says there's no point having £35 million in Barnes sitting on the bench when we have so many options from the left and so few on the right. If we have to sell Barnes to buy someone like Mbeumo or Semenyo, then so be it. Graham says, still believe by the end of the season, Barnes to score more than Gordon, but that's not a criticism of Gordon. Gary says, I think it's about keeping Barnes happy. He won't want to be a super sub, or a squad player. David says, we have a real serious set of professionals running our club and developing our stadium, academy and squad, and this should accelerate our sponsorship increase. Excuse me. PSR and the cartel will not stop us. It might stop me, though, with this coughing fit.
Do you want me to take over?
Yeah, read that and answer the question about the league table.
So Newcastle are 10th, but they'll drop to 11th. If Brentford or Fulham win tonight, it looks like they're only 3 points off 4th. 5 without a win in the league. It boosts them even more.
Yeah, important to get that 5 without a win. Gone, obviously.
Off the back, yeah.
Does it matter more a little bit because you've played a side that is supposedly going for the title? The side that Newcastle would now only be only 3 points off.
Yeah, I mean, I think if that 1-0 win and that performance came against Brighton, it would mean a lot less than Arsenal. I think it was the fact that it was, on paper, someone who's meant to be a title challenger. I don't know how Arsenal's title credentials are fair at the minute after Saturday's performance and their recent form, but as we said earlier in the show, that pressure needed to be lifted, and we weren't sure whether that was going to happen because of the calibre of opposition that Newcastle were facing in the last couple of days. But they've taken 2 really good teams and made them look pretty average, both on home soil, which again is another concern because they've got to go to the City ground against one of the most informed teams.
It's boisterous there, isn't it?
They've got to start, lifting those performances away from home. But I mean, you could probably go back to every podcast we've done in the last 3 seasons and say they need to start lifting their form away from home. So, I mean, they're just a different animal at home.
Yeah.
The results at St James's Park are ridiculous this year. I mean, only Brighton and Manchester City to beat them at home. It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, and the fans play a huge part in that. Man says, agree with you, Andrew. Shares not first choice for me now. His pace is completely gone. Still passes the ball around great. Pace-wise, his legs have gone. Well, let us know in the comments. Brian says, we never needed a left-side centre-back, especially with Botman coming back. We definitely need a young right-sided centre-back to challenge and eventually take over from Cher. Graham says, agree. Andrew, Cher have started to question and wonder now or next season as a squad player, maybe why Gay is needed. Right. Yeah, fantastic week for Newcastle United. Fantastic win over Arsenal. Thoroughly enjoyable Saturday afternoon. Aaron? You've got the player that I need to guess, right?
Yeah, I'm in the hosting chair for this week's Are we still calling it trivia? Or just guess who?
It's 20 questions.
20 questions, that's it. I've got the player. So
Right.
Take it away.
Did he play under Sir Bobby Robson?
He didn't play under Sir Bobby
He didn't.
Robson.
Okay. Did he play under Alan Pardew?
No, he didn't.
Did he play under Steve Bruce?
No, he didn't.
Okay, my tactic of just naming managers is not working.
Hang on. He didn't.
He was on loan.
No, so this might give it away. He was signed by Robson,
Okay.
but I don't think he played under him.
So he played under Suez. Okay. Signed by Robson. Didn't play.
Or if he did, he played a limited amount of games.
Okay.
So it was that era.
James Milner.
No.
He was probably signed by Sooners, actually. Okay. Defender?
Nope.
Striker?
Nope.
Midfielder?
Yeah.
Winger?
Yeah.
So winger signed for Bobby towards the end of his time here. European player?
Yeah.
French?
Yeah.
So French player signed.
Flying through these. You're on. I've got you down as 8.
Yeah. French player signed for Sir Bobby. This is where I need my photographic
I feel like
memory.
I need to turn the comments off. Don't look at the laptop.
No, don't worry. I'm not like you. I'm not a cheat. So he must have been young then. If you say, did he play more than 100 times for Newcastle
He
United?
did. Wikipedia has him playing 118 games for Newcastle.
Ooh. So as a winger, I was trying to think who came in. So
Yeah.
Robert, Solano, under Souness, who was the wingers? I've totally gone blank now. Did he play for another Premier League side?
He did.
Doesn't really help us that, does it?
Only played for Premier League clubs, despite being from the continent.
Okay. That doesn't really, was he a French international?
He was very briefly, not many French appearances, but Wikipedia says he plays twice for France, 13 times for France's under 21s.
Signed for Sir Bobby Robson, and he was played 113 times. That's quite a lot. That's quite a few games, that, isn't it, for Newcastle?
I'm just gonna grab the thing and see if anyone's got it.
Oh, yes. I hope that didn't transfer through to our audience. That screeched there.
Yeah, the comments are flying in, and a lot of people are getting it right. We've got
it right.
Graham's got it right. Ches has got it right.
Is it obvious?
Craig's got it right.
Was he a right midfielder?
No, he was predominantly on the left.
Predominantly on the left. I've just had a total mind blank here.
See, it's not as easy as you make it out in the hosting chair. It's
No, he didn't.
Would you like a clue?
Go on, give us a clue.
I
thought I was going to. To be fair, the last time I did this, I did it in 5.
Yeah, you were due a bad one.
I'm going to kick myself, yeah.
He played for 2 other Premier League clubs. Newcastle, someone.
Go on, give us one of those clubs. Be generous.
Aston Villa.
Aston Villa. I've said Milner.
He had 5 years at Newcastle. He had 5 years at Aston Villa with a stint in between for 2 years.
Solano played for. Solano didn't he? Did he play for? No, he went for Villa and then he went to West Ham. So it's not. Solano played more than 100 odd games.
Somebody, Les, in the comments has put a nickname that he probably didn't want, but he was given by a bumbling Newcastle manager in a press conference.
Oh, it's Charles Nzogby, isn't it?
Charles Nzogby.
Very, very talented player, Charles Nzogby. Oh man,
tough. You were due a tough one. See, it's not as easy.
That wasn't that tough, to be fair. Yeah. Like I'm not happy that I've messed that one up.
So yeah, well done, everyone in the comments. As I say, you had Charles, Craig, and Gary got it right before anyone else.
Charles is in the
yeah, Charles himself. Yeah, it's me.
Thank you for that. That was very enjoyable. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Thank you for joining in the trivia as well. Sorry that I was so pathetic at it, but hey, that is the way of life. Thank you to NORD VPN for sponsoring the podcast. The link for your exclusive offer will be in the podcast description box. Do click on it, help support the podcast, and keep yourselves protected from the scammers and hackers out there. Thanks to Aaron for limping his way into the studio. He's off to get his summer friend and head back home now. It's been a pleasure as always. Give the video a thumbs up. Get into the comments. I will reply to every single one of you guys. Leave us a rating and review. Share the pod amongst your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk. And for myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys very soon.